Welcome back to another We Ourselves video. Today I want to continue a series of videos on the dangers of diversifying classic sci-fi. In this installment, I want to discuss the Apple Plus series Foundation. I'm a fan of the original Foundation series by Isaac Asimov, as well as his companion Robots of Dawn series. I began reading sci-fi epics like Foundation, Dune, Lensman, and other series in my late high school years. When I dived into the Foundation novels, I found the premise and the scope of the work fascinating. In particular, I love the idea of psychohistory and the ability to predict the movements of large numbers of people over years, decades, and even centuries. And this idea of psychohistory has inspired the predictive algorithms that I use in my own epic sci-fi and fantasy novels. Considering when the first Foundation novels were originally published, of course the main characters were white males. Likewise, most of the cultures represented were basically European in nature, one of the exceptions being the nods to Asian culture with the emperor and his court. But I'll give Asimov credit for his later Foundation novels, where he included main female characters as well as tackled the ideas of hermaphrodites and gender-neutral identification. Those books came out in the 1980s, over 40 years ago. Naturally, when Apple announced that it was going to do a live-action adaptation of the Foundation series, I was excited to check it out. Veteran showrunner David S. Goyer revealed in an interview that he presented Apple with a 7-season story arc. Now, I don't know if Apple greenlit all 7 seasons, but so far we've gotten 2 complete seasons on the streaming network. But when it comes to translating the original material for a modern audience, how did the writers do with representation and diversity, particularly when it comes to black characters? Was it good? Was it bad? Was it subpar? Do the negative tropes and stereotypes for black male and female characters still exist? My answer to all those questions is yes, they do. In my opinion, Apple's Foundation series illustrates the dangers of diversifying classic sci-fi. Before I go forward, I want to warn you there will be spoilers. So if you haven't watched Foundation, then I suggest you stop now. So with that warning out of the way, let's dive in. What is Foundation? And this is taken from Apple's description for the series. Based on the award-winning novels by Isaac Asimov, Foundation chronicles a band of exiles on their monumental journey to save humanity and rebuild civilization amid the fall of the Galactic Empire. And I just want to add that the leader of the exiles is a character named Harry Seldon, played by actor Jared Harris, who developed an advanced mathematical model that predicts the fall of the Empire. When he makes his predictions public, he's banished to a remote outpost called Terminus by the Emperor, Brother Day, who's played by Lee Pace. Apple invested a lot of money in this series. The production value is high. They have excellent performances by the cast, and most notable is that David S. Goyer realized he had to make some substantial changes to the existing material in order to get it to work for 7 seasons. And that's what I want to talk about. The first huge change is to the Emperor's dynasty. The original books didn't spend any time with the Emperor, but in the show, we now have the Klingon genetic dynasty, which is maintained through cloning. Again, this is different from the books. The reason for this change is rather obvious. It allows for the Emperor, played by Lee Pace, to remain a consistent presence from season to season. That's important because the Foundation story itself takes place over centuries. And so you have 3 versions of the Emperor present at all times. You have Brother Day, Brother Dawn, and Brother Dusk, the oldest one, played by Terrence Mann. The second big change is an expected one in our current culture. David S. Goyer has populated the Foundation universe with a lot of people of color. 2 of the main characters from the books have been race and gender swapped for 2 black women. Salvor Hardin, played by Leah Harvey, and Gail Dornick, played by Lula Bell. Both of these were white male characters, and now they are mother and daughter. And by cryogenically freezing Gail, the mother, she's able to remain a consistent character through at least 2 seasons. The series begins with Gail's voiceover as we meet her daughter, Salvor Hardin. That's followed by a quick scene with Harry Seldon and Raish, played by Alfred Enoch, And then we finally meet Gail, our narrator, as she's about to leave her home planet of cynics. We follow Gail, the classic fish out of water character, as she's introduced to the wonders of the Imperial homeworld called Trantor. Like Coruscant from Star Wars, Trantor is a planet that is totally covered by city. This allows the audience to learn the mythos of the Foundation along with Gail. The acting is superb. We grow to feel for Gail as she meets her mentor, Harry Seldon, and is subsequently arrested, put on trial, and ultimately exiled with Harry to Terminus. All of this is done extremely well, from the acting, the costumes, the set pieces, the music, etc. It's fine, and that's the problem. Because as we enjoy this show, we have a very negative stereotype of the Black community shown and reiterated throughout the first episode. And that negative stereotype is that the Black community in America doesn't value education or values it less than other segments of the population. Of course, that's a lie. Black Americans have always and still do value education. The problem is, our media never highlights that. Added to that negative belief is the very real statistic that of all racial groups in America, Black Americans still overwhelmingly identify as religious, particularly Christian. This show has taken both the real statistic and the negative stereotype and turned them both up to 200% to present a Black-coded planet called Cynics, a society of anti-science, anti-math, religious extremists. Gail, the only person with an extraordinary mind, is exiled before she can be caught and executed by her own people. In an age where we're trying to get more kids of color, particularly African American kids, into science and technology and into STEM and STEAM academies, why would the show creators and producers decide to reinforce this negative stereotype? As Gail arrives on Trantor, she immediately meets Raish, played by Alfred Enoch, and you can remember that he's from Harry Potter, and he was also in How to Get Away with Murder, where he played Viola Davis's son. He and Gail fall in love at first sight, literally, and I'm thinking, cool, we got some Black love on the screen. But then that brings us to the negative stereotype number 2 and 3. Raish himself is the quasi-adoptive son of Harry Seldon. We find out later that Raish came from wait for it, a broken home. Yet another negative stereotype. And so Harry Seldon basically came in as a white savior to save Raish from a bad family life in childhood. Raish and Gail, like I said, fall in love at once, and for 2 episodes we have this brief expression of Black love. And I'm like, wow, okay, this is interesting. But of course, you know that couldn't last because they're not going to have Raish stay around. And this leads to yet another negative stereotype, perhaps one of the worst ones I felt in the first season. Harry Seldon discovers that he has a degenerative disease that will slowly take away his great mind, and so he plans to kill himself before anybody can discover this. Now, he's also made arrangements to basically transfer his mind into a computer, and that's going to be stored on a hidden ship, which Raish is supposed to pilot. But when Raish falls for Gail, Harry decides to make Raish kill him instead so that he can't remain with Gail. The show doesn't make it clear, but it's implied Raish didn't stab and kill Harry, but it's implicated. Even in the show, Gail complains that Harry wanted to keep her and Raish apart, and the writers made sure that happened. The Black man literally sacrifices himself to save the Black woman. By doing this, the writers reduced him down to basically a sperm donor because hooking up with Gail was only important in the fact that they would have a kid, Salvor Hardin, and she would be one of the wardens of the Terminus settlement. But that's not the worst part. What did they do with Raish? Well, they execute him. Again, in a day and age where we still have a disparity of death penalty cases, and in a lot of states, they're trying to put a moratorium on it, why would the talented writers that are attached to David S. Goyer's series do this? Oh, and let's not forget that he's basically an innocent man, so the negative visual is compounded by an innocent Black man being sentenced to death. It just boggles your mind that nobody was there to say, hey, you may not want to do that. And where are all the sensitivity experts? Why is it that when it comes to negative Black stereotypes and tropes in these shows, these experts, quote unquote, remain silent? Next on the list is Gail's daughter, Salvor Hardin. She's a warden, or basically a sheriff, on Terminus. At first, I really didn't like her character much. The actress Leah Harvey is good, and by the second season, I've grown to really like her character. I just think it was the writing in the first season, including having her date a guy she had zero chemistry with. But one last thing about Salvor Hardin. She has a Black surrogate father played by Clark Peters. He was the first warden and mayor of Terminus, but we never really get to see him in that capacity. And of course, he dies, and that leads to the oldest trope of all. Goyer has introduced all these people of color, particularly focusing in on the diverse women more so than the men. However, all the people that are still in charge, the Emperor, Brother Day, Brother Dawn, Brother Dusk, are all white males. The last surviving android or robot, played by Laura Byrne, who has existed for thousands of years and serves the Emperor and even takes control by the end of season 2, she's a white female, so you're still keeping it within the family. Harry Seldon, the savior of all knowledge in the Empire, he's a white male. And we find out, believe it or not, in the second season, again, spoiler alert, even though Gail was the only person on her home planet of Synax who had the mind for advanced math, it might not have been all of her natural ability. Because in season 2, we're introduced to the Mentalics, again, extremely powerful telepaths. And it's implied and stated that their leader reached out to Gail and gave her the solution to the math problem that allowed her to win the contest and get off Synax. So even that accomplishment from Gail, a Black woman, is being called into question. The Foundation series has high production values, very good acting, and overall, it's a great reimagining of the original material. Now, if they could just eliminate the troubling negative stereotypes that they introduced because of the diversifying of the cast, we'd be okay. But for now, those are just my views on Apple's Foundation series and the dangers of diversifying classic sci-fi. As always, like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.